So, as you know, on this channel, we are big supporters of PR. And one of the big, big wins certainly has been the constant flow, the pushing, and the realization that sooner or later we are going to get PR, but we just have to be willing to fight for it. And certainly during the last Labour conference, we got that motion for PR passed. And even as I said, while that was a big win for the PR movement, the fight doesn't stop now. There are a push for local councils to recognise the need to get Westminster to push for PR, and that is happening now. That movement is happening. If you go to the website Councils for PR, you will see the pre-prepared motion that you can have and how you would submit this to your council and how you get them to sort of move on it. So the resource is already there. If you have a council that you would want to do that with, go for it. It's already passed in a number of councils at the moment. I believe there is a list of councils that have passed it, councils where this motion has been submitted and it's potentially going to a vote. So if it is there in your your local area, go get involved, go down, speak to the importance of getting PR passed, and get involved in the movement, because this is definitely a movement that is worth having, because PR is very, very much universally acclaimed across all sectors. Even on the right, they admit, yeah, actually, PR is not that bad an idea. The big pushback, of course, against it has been very much the upper echelons of the Tory Conservative Party that is very dead set against it, because as we've all seen from the numbers of how a PR election would work out, they would never ever get more than, I think it's like 34-35% of the vote, meaning that they would never be in direct control or power, meaning that they would need to sort of make deals or sort of start appealing from less a more sort of hard right base and maybe sort of move to a more sort of centrist base. They would actually have to move to appeal to a larger audience. They wouldn't have to just rely on going for this really sort of rich, sort of wealthy base that first past the post sort of really rewards them for. And of course, it was inevitable sooner or later, because there is this big push, and essentially if you get involved in the PR movement, one of the things you do realize is very quickly just how many people from different parties there are involved. It's not just Labour and Liberal Democrats, it's Conservatives as well who are involved in this movement. So of course, as we said, we've been following sort of Conservative Home to keep an eye on what they're saying. So it is natural that eventually an article would appear, given the big rise in PR and the push that is happening for it, that an article would eventually emerge saying, if you're Conservative, you shouldn't be pushing for for PR. That's only the hard right. Don't be a hard right. So we're going to go through this today, because, to be honest, this article is complete nonsense, and the comments down below, we're not going to have time to go through the comments, but the comments down below this article, every single one so far has been dead against what has been put out here in this article. And most people in the comments coming out in support for PR. So you can just see how good a movement PR generally really is becoming, and it's something that we should be pushing for and not let up on, because this is a fight, as I've always said, that is difficult to have, but it's worth having, because the rewards of it are going to be that we get a much better democracy and better democratic representation for everyone in the UK. So before we go diving into this, please do remember to hit the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a motivation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. And of course, there is the YouTube thank you button and the YouTube subscription, the Pony Club, you can join as well. So thank you for everyone, and on with today's show. So as always, we said this comes from Conservative Home, as you can see at the top. The title is Georgia L. Guildhall, I think that's how you say it, with the title of "Ignore the Siren Voices on the Hard Right. proportional representation would be a blow against British democracy. Well, straight away, no, actually, it wouldn't. It would actually be amazing for British democracy. We'll get into it. So, as she says, kicks off with Labour is well placed to emerge as the largest single party in the next general election. Yeah, given Keir Starmer's underwhelming approval ratings, not to mention their party's present divisions with its traditional voting base, we could see him securing a top job only via a deal with the Liberal Democrats. Well, if you look at current polling numbers, he certainly doesn't need that deal with the Liberal Democrats at the moment, the way that the polls are going, but So, in that situation, their great hobby horse, constitutional reform, which is much needed, even Labour itself does admit that constitutional reform is needed, but there you go, continues, was saying, surely would be very high on any agenda for negotiations. Such reforms would surely find public, if not parliamentary, support amongst the modest but growing chunk of ex-Tories placing their faith in smaller parties. So this is what I like at the moment. They're trying to cast people who support PR. Bear in mind what I've said about the comments. Every single comment down below is in support for PR. So this is how much of a hit piece this really is against pushing proportional representation, trying to place that any Tory that is pushing for PR is it's just an ex-Tory who's disgruntled with the party. They're not happy. But anyway, we'll continue. So with the vast majority, at least 64% of Labour voters, and just over half, 51% of the general public actually backing electoral reform. So wait, should we go for it? That's good. If over like 60% of over 64, nearly 65% of Labour voters and over half of the general public want electoral reform, is that not a good policy that maybe the Tories should fight for? Yeah. Politics, ladies and gentlemen. But there you go. Some people just clearly can't seem to grasp it of going for a popular position. But there you go. Yeah, that's just blown my mind. But then never mind. Back to it. A Starmer premiership could easily justify such a radical break with our past. Why should we not go for it? It's not a radical break. It's just changing the voting system to something that would be very, very good. This would be a grave error. Proportional representation, here we go. Like I say, it's a hit piece, stands to endanger not just the future of conservatism, but British democracy as we know it. Many on the left do not shy away from admitting very selfish motivations for such reforms. They regularly complain that Tory victories would not be so common under PR, where coalitions would be the norm. Yeah, you look at voting strengths in any constituency. Cornwall is always the traditional one that is used. I think Cornwall has 7 or 8 MPs, all of them Tory. But when you look at voting intentions, only about 40, I think it's like 48% of people in Cornwall actually vote for the Conservatives, while the rest either vote for Liberal Democrats or Labour. How is it not fair that they don't get representation? Instead, they end up with a Conservative MP. But there you go. And yeah, coalitions would be the norm. Coalitions are pretty much the norm in every other not only European country, but mostly around the world as well. But we'll get back to it. It is notable that these would-be reformers rarely cite Barack Obama's 2008 victory or Tony Blair's 2005 win as examples of why PR is needed. No, we do include those. We include those. And if you're on it, and if you want an example, why not Tony Blair's um, original 1997 landslide victory. We want to change the voting system on that. But anyway, she continues, nor do we hear about their grave distress that Sir Edward Heath, that quit Downing Street back in February on the 1974 grand piano in tow, despite his party's command of the popular vote. PR would be good. PR would mean that there would be a coalition of voters. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be, lead to like disasters or whatever. You're clearly, you can, as I said at the beginning, this is a hit piece for against PR, and it has not gone over well. You know, just because there are wins or defeats, or even when Edward Heath quit Downing Street, that's not a valid argument against PR. But back to it. PR would doom British voters to the fate of the system like Israel's, that recently saw its fifth general election under 4 years after another mismatched coalition collapsed. If we are sick of the chaos of the late Conservatives' perma crisis, PR is not likely to offer us any comfort. So here's the thing. Those Conservatives' perma crises aren't a fault of even first past the post or even PR. That is a fault of the own Conservative Party fracturing with its own internal divisions. It has absolutely nothing to do with a voting system. And if you want to look at Israel and say, oh, Israel's voting system is one that has sort of fractured and fallen apart, that is one of different reasons. It's not because of the voting system, it's because those coalitions have been unable to actually work together. You've had far right and far left parties try to work together, and it clearly hasn't worked. There are different problems in Israel. So once again, you cannot just go, oh, it's the voting system, it's PR that's Israel's problem. It's not. There are deeper problems than that. So again, you cannot base it on the PR alone. And PR in the Israel situation has no bearing on it. It's not to do. There are bigger problems in Israel's politics than it's, just PR. But like I said at the beginning, this is a hit piece. The Israel model also typifies how PR empowers small and often more extreme parties. With Benjamin Netanyahu's recent win coming off the back of an electoral pact with the far-right leaders Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, both of whom have lengthy records of chilling anti-Arab sentiments. So again, these parties are small. The PR vote, by the way, even if you took at face value and UKIP came back, UKIP would only win roughly about one seat, meaning that probably Nigel Farage would be in Parliament. But guess what? There would be other parties as well, and making coalitions, making friends, building, building coalitions, looking at policies to sort of get like maybe the Green Party on side, or things like that. There are ways to do it and sort of build these coalitions. And guess what? You don't have to ally with the far right. And even if they did get in, they would win very, very small numbers of seats. Like, again, UKIP example, one seat. So back to it. Among our European neighbours, this framework often permits green parties with slim public backing to prop up governments on the basis that radical environmental policies are pursued. Why is that a bad thing? If, let's say, PR happens and the Conservatives, to gain a majority in Parliament, have to do a deal with maybe, I don't know, Caroline Lucas and maybe her sort of 5 or maybe, I think it's 15 Green Party MPs. I think it works out. I'm not 100% sure. Can't remember off the top of my head. Have to do a deal to pursue like good green policies. How is that a bad thing? again, it's not overly bad. You can see why this is trying to sort of scare people into sort of being worried about PR. Installing PR could also threaten the very voters' relationship with their elected MPs, are of course the old classic, by creating the vast new constituencies consisting of regions with little history as their cultural or electoral unit, which are represented by multiple politicians, with no single town or community to hold them accountable. Absolutely wrong. Completely wrong. You can still have a proportional representative system with a single MP for an elected town. You can still have that. That is still possible. What she is talking to, of course, is the European parliamentary model, which she's about to actually mention in the next sentence. And that's, of course, why she's trying to sort of, again, worry people about it. Oh my God, you might lose your representation with your MP. Well, guess what? Most people don't even know who their MP is. Like, that's a fact. In the UK, most people do not know who their MP is and have never even contacted or even met their MP in some cases. The vast majority so. So if you're so worried about that, why should it be an issue when that unfortunately is a basic fact of British political life? So even if that is an issue and you're worried about, there are ways where we can still keep that local constituency MP link. But anyway, she continues, just under the European parliamentary model, the constituencies would be left confused how they are represented by and how the triggering apathy and low turnout. Again, you're referring to the European parliamentary model, partly because the British government and other parties, bar UKIP, did not push their sort of voting bases to go and vote. That's why there was such low turnout for the European parliamentary elections. That was why UKIP dominated them, because they knew that if they energized and got their voter base to turn out and vote for these elections, it would benefit them because of the low turnout. If people like Labour and the Conservatives and so the rest of the parties had energized their voter base, UKIP wouldn't have been such a political force that they were in the European Parliament. Of course, no electoral system is perfect. So first past the post isn't either, but there you go. And politicians will often be guilty of failing to fulfill their manifesto commitments, as Number 10's newest tenants well know. However, there is something uniquely sinister and permanent that the permanent coalitions that PR would require. No, it's not at all. But again, like I said, this is a hit piece, so whatever. Under it, the country is shut out of secretive post-election talks that decide who governs and what policies will be kept or scrapped. That's politics. That even happens now in the Lib Dem Conservative coalition. That happened in the Conservative Lib Dem coalition. Not the Conservative DUP coalition. That happened. People are kept out of those talks now. So again, your argument doesn't hold water. Only when the tell-all memoirs and the TV dramas arrive years later might it be made possible to glean a sense of whether a party pushed for the politics it promised voters or if they were keen to strike a deal at any cost. And here's the thing. What would happen would be negotiations. So if the Green Party maybe is, let's say they have, 15 MPs walking into Parliament and, Labour needs those 15 MPs to get passed, well, then, of course, the Green Party would have more power. But if they're talking about, coalitions, maybe the Green Party then has to compromise. Maybe it goes, okay, we'll support you, but we want this one policy. Maybe we want to make sure that onshore wind farms get built again, or particular, onshore wind farm gets built. That is possible. They would have to compromise. They wouldn't be able to just bully their way into sort of certain situations, unless it's the case of where maybe, like, I don't know, the Conservatives might have that one seat that they desperately need, and maybe Farage hasn't come in, so we can't do a coalition with the Conservatives. Again, clearly hasn't thought about that. But then then maybe the Greens could say, well, okay, we want this, this, and this, and we'll join your coalition. And like I say, that happens under our current system now. So again, it's not really an argument against PR. In New Zealand and Denmark, many parties have recently faced public pressure to admit their ironclad plans for any post-election alliances. Well, why not have that anyway? Why not allow the public to know those plans ahead of time, that if we have to do a deal, this is what we might have to do? I see no problem with that, and I'm pretty sure I've got viewers from Denmark who would agree that that's probably a good ahead of time to probably know about. But the PR system ensures that these parties will never have to keep to such pledges. PR allows political elitists to leave accountability at the door. No, it doesn't, because again, they would always have to answer at any election. And if it doesn't keep a promise, then people won't get voted for again. But there you go. It's the same in the such political system now. That very same argument applies to the system we have now. You've just even admitted it as much in your own article. Permitting them to leave the simple blame at either coalition partners for their failures ahead of the next vote, and vice versa. Oh, you mean like the Conservatives did to the Liberal Democrats? So while small parties such as Reform, Reclaim, the SDP, and UKIP are eager to piggyback on the project of PR, this too is a mistake to anyone keen to advance the conversation of the small c, from which we know for these parties the current policy platforms, from which some very cases is very little, they have even in common, given the dissatisfaction with the Conservative Party. Well, that's where negotiation would come in. The SDB lean left on the economy while rejecting the pro-EU legacy of its initial iteration. These policies of Reclaim seem to promote the lead up to at least this year's North Shropshire by-election, with slashing the fuel duty and stopping a small boat crisis. Reform envisions the Singapore on Thames vision of Brexit Britain that few outside of Tufton Street have much sympathy with. It is clear not whether, how, or if the Conservative Party can actually stand to actually please these voters, but it does not suggest the incompatible brand of Thatcherite nostalgics, Social Democrats, and free speech warriors would feasibly secure a coherent alternative. Few would now agree that our parliamentary system is currently delivering the best options for Britain, but upending our adversarial system risks empowering the backroom deals that undermine any relating faith in our politics. Absolutely complete bogus. I'm sorry, Georgia, but your argument there are complete bogus. This is a hit piece, plain and simple. You have not really thought it out, because many of your arguments actually are, if you were to say replace your arguments and put them against our current system, first past the post, as we've already discussed, they would directly arguments for why we should change it and go towards PR. PR is good. It gives the UK a better representative democracy. It allows smaller parties to come in, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You would probably even get single issue parties, which would maybe even crop up for one exact point, maybe to get something passed and then probably disappear into the wind after it gets passed. It's entirely possible. And you even admit our own system is not perfect, but some of the things you say about alliances are entirely applicable to your very own party of conservatism, which you appear to be a big supporter of. So, Georgia, I don't know if you will ever see this. If you ever want to come and talk to a lefty PR supporter, by all means, get in contact. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you. But yeah, I'm sorry, this is a hit piece. Plain and simple. And even the comments down below call you out for writing such a hit piece. And all the comments are vastly in support of PR, saying how wrong you are on this. So this goes to show you what I said right at the beginning, that there is now this building power, this building thrust to change the voting system. And depending on what you want for maybe House of Commons reform for the voting system to be towards PR, or maybe even towards the House of Lords. Like I say, let's say we reform the House of Lords into a PR system for people to get elected. Well, there's no constituency link with the House of Lords. Why not turn it into, as I've said before, a House of Regional Representatives? So you split up all the UK into sort of different regions, and every region sort of like gets, I don't know, 5 seats. Have it like that. That would be perfect. I think that would massively change our electoral system as well, given the fact that we would have a second house that is then democratically elected by PR and would give Britain a really good secondary house that now the main house that might be, let's say you've got a situation like you've got now and a very much sort of more broad selection, that would force certainly the Conservatives into not going ahead and trying to pull such crazy plans that they've been trying to pull for the past couple of years. But there you go. Anyway, yeah, this is a hit piece, plain, pure, and simply. And to be honest, I'm really glad that you've got comments down below from people, again, who are logged into their Conservative home accounts, who are actually pushing back against this, saying that PR would be a good thing. So that is a really good sign of things to come. But as always, thank you very much. Oh, it's been a long video, this one, so I do apologize, but there you go. It's been a long video, this one, but as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and all the other stuff. You know the drill by now. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.